map 1, and we are getting right into it. So in the upper left, playing for Na'Vi, up and coming and looking better and better, it's Spirit.
And his opponent in the bottom right, in blue, sporting that beautiful Team Liquid horse, he is Cure. And that's like one of the cool things about him, right? You think about players over the years, and obviously, again, things shifted online in a big way and slight reduction in tournaments and all that, but it was like getting a guy like Maru to play in your online tournament like 6-7 years ago, impossible. A lot of those guys, like their schedules are crazy, they're stacked, they're busy. If it wasn't something huge, right, like a Shoutcraft kind of a thing, you had a little bit of difficulty getting some of those top players out there. But Cure was always somebody that was trying to push that envelope and train himself against everybody else, and it's one of those things that's allowed him to remain competitive with some of these top guys, especially as some of the best players in the world now are now European, and it's not all just the Korean players. That dynamic shifts, but Cure has he's been flexible enough to blow with the wind and not be broken by it, shall we say.
Yeah, it's funny because now I would say Cure, he's been the second best Terran in Korea for quite a while. He is like the distillation of Korean Terran. He's not, say, Gumiho is aggressive and has wrinkles to his play that most players do. He likes Marauders and does these things, and Mario's this late game god, and Ryung's like the thought leader of Korean Terrans, and Byun's this just crazy aggressive, like, oh, sure, fine. And Cure is just, he is Terran. He does aggressive stuff when needed, defensive stuff when needed, just really solid play.
Yeah, he is the in the most complimentary way possible. But he is the generic. I'm going to just straight whoop you Korean Terran. He's not the guy that's adding the extra stuff that some of the other guys you mentioned. I think that's a great comparison, because somebody like Gumiho, he does a lot of crazy stuff, especially since he's been playing less mech, but he has that wrinkle to his play. He is known for that. It is something people have to prepare for. When you're playing against Cure, you're typically going to be able to say to yourself, okay, this is not going to be not no frills in that it's boring, but no frills in that I don't expect Cure to be battlecruiser rushing me, right? And if that happened, I mean, I guess it would be awesome. But at the same time, he is just somebody that plays that sharp, fast game. So we'll see where he wants to go here. The openers both end up pretty complementary to one another. Fast expands, nothing crazy happening. A little bit slower for Spirit, but in TVT, it's never a bad move to rush up to that tech, because more often than not, you end up needing it for one reason or another. The aggressive play comes through, or you want to be the first aggressor on the map. But for Site Delta, the games can get long. You got a good amount of space. I think that center path always gets a little bit tricky with like the Marine tank positioning if you get caught off over there. So once the rocks open, it gets a bit easier. But otherwise, lots of big open space can make you feel a little claustrophobic sometimes, Bayo.
Yeah, I want to point something out here that we're seeing Spirit do, because you're talking about openings and kind of wanting tech open. There's a little bit of a wrinkle that we've seen Spirit go for. So generally, you'd put your barracks like right here in the middle of the wall, and then you kind of go back, and it's fairly easy to scout. Spirit has just offset by a tiny bit, 10 units or whatever, like just off a little bit off to the left side. And that means that as Cure jumps in with the Reaper and tries to figure out what happens, he's got no idea. He's seen nothing. He saw the Cyclone, and he saw some of the units when the Reaper went in and tried to find something, but by yeah, sure, you don't have a wall in the main base, but it's not generally relevant in this matchup. And all of a sudden, he's made it that much harder for Cure to figure out what's happening. Now, is there anything weird happening? Yes, actually there is. There's a second starport on the way. I'm glad I paused when I was asking that question, because he's going for the 2 starport Viking all in. This is pretty cool.
All right, well, cool to see. Yeah, second starport on the way. So that Liberator will go out, try to create a little bit of harass, get in his face. He'll be able to see the third base coming in, and back on the other side, we do have that Cyclone drop moving out. And this build, we talked a little bit about this during the break. Obviously, there was a period of time where this was much stronger, during that weird period where we just turned Cyclones into god tier units for 2 weeks for no reason. But now they're it's a little bit more reined in. But if you don't already have the Viking, then sometimes the Terran player can dance a lot when it comes to using this. But the second starport to secure the air control for a big siege up play just makes a lot of sense, and that's right in line with the kind of aggressive posture that we expect out of a player like Spirit, as that Liberator is able to pick up an SCV, deny some mining, and pull the whole army around. Well, he has a second Liberator going for the natural. So it's like a crazy amount of pressure off of just 2 units and then into a huge push up the front.
Absolutely. You get 4 Vikings on top of things. It's like, oh, I thought we were going to Liberator do a little bit more. You put 4 Vikings in there, 4 at a time, over and over again. You just get this massive Viking lead, and then it's really hard to handle the tanks. That's what the Vikings are for. It's not that they're going to do anything in and of themselves, but they make it. By the way, I said 4 Vikings because I expected this to be reactored out. He didn't put a reactor on the second one. That's fine. So it's going to be 3 Vikings at a time. He's going to still build that air lead. And then the tanks siege up. You have to spend scans secure to make that happen. You're eventually going to have, I mean, you're still going to have 3 scans right now. But it's just really hard to dislodge this tank army. And the moment that Spirit starts building that momentum, you land the Vikings down, and then you have that much more damage. It's really hard to deal with, but it's also very all-in. I think that's the important thing to say here. There's no third base for Spirit. He's down, what is that, 7 workers right now? Looks like Liberator getting a little bit more than the Vikings off of position.
Try to say, I like the backstab attempt, but you make a great point. And also the other thing too, Vikings, yeah, they can be great. We know landed they can kill stuff, and we know they're great at zoning, but what happens if he tries to force this fight and Cure is able to get interference matrix on the tanks and win on the ground? You know, like these are things he has to consider. You're 100% correct. There is not a lot of leeway for him to make mistakes here. And Spirit is going to need to get a lot of damage done. He's taking his time moving up on him.
Remember, there's 8 Vikings to 2, so you say, oh, what if the interference matrix happened? Well, technically that's what the Vikings are for. Their job is to zone, to make it so hard for the Ravens to join the fray. And for now, they're not really, but because there's this Viking lead, we talked about Vikings and tanks, you can add Liberators in as well. And this is where life gets complicated. Interference matrix are going to shut down, well, a Liberator. They're going to shut down a tank. Ravens barely don't go down. But this is just slowing this, right? The Liberator, yeah, it's not going to kill that tank at the front line, sure. But the Liberator's still there. The tank has not gone down. That's a great scan, though. This is a lot of damage on these tanks. So that's a bit of a mistake there. A little bit of a misstep there from Spirit. We talked about how this is all in. You really can't make that many mistakes. This is already, it's still powerful. Absolutely. He can still kind of wedge his way in there. But this is already starting to peter out just a little bit. Stim is done. Combat shields getting started. 1-1 getting started. The window where this is really going to work out for Spirit is starting to narrow just a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, if he could get the Marines into a position where he could try to split or flank, hit from a couple of different directions, that'd be nice. He tried to move the Ravens to the south side. He lost one of them and the Viking. So Spirit was already thinking about that. He's like, oh, if you're going to try to drop anything on the low side, if you're going to try to attack from the north and the south. But the air control in TVT is always such a huge factor, and I'm really not surprised to see a build like this come out. I love it because of how hard that third base is to take. Landing the Vikings in this moment, though, is going to pull some of these units down the ramp, almost a soft bait, but he still has 3 tanks and 3 Liberators outside of your natural. So while, yes, he may have had that third command center for a very long time, it's not like it's given him access to any additional resources beyond mining himself out very quickly with the mules, which is, I mean, that's just what normally happens. So now he has Liberators in his base, sieging on the mineral line and the main ramp, and I feel like we're approaching the win condition for Spirit in this game here, Bayo. There's not too much more he needs to do. If he hasn't locked on 2 bases or on 1 base, then that's just going to get ugly. I think sieging in range of the high ground tank, perhaps he's trying to open it up a teensiest bit. Submarines do come in for the flank. SCVs get pulled, and like he's going to stay up in the air. They're going for the medevacs. He's going to try to retain. Not so much. Okay, well, actually ends up turning into, I'm not going to say this has been the prettiest game, but somehow Cure finds a way to survive this ordeal.
I mean, you say it's not the prettiest thing, but that was a great hold there from Cure. Put medevac with Marines, 8 Marines on the north side, medevac with 8 Marines on the left side. And that was just enough of a flank that, yeah, he breaks everything back, kills off a lot of the Vikings. The tanks are going to go down now, and, well, the base is still there. Right? He didn't lose the base. Yes, he lost some SCVs, but he still had roughly of a lead, and now he's going to get on top more tanks as they look to siege up here. Vikings are going to land, but they're dead as well, and Spirit is dead in that, well, I don't know that it's fair to call him dead in this game just yet, but it's the biggest thing too. Bad time.
Yeah, like Spirit he has his third on location now, and Cure has a similar number of SCVs he can transfer over. Like saturation's not a question anymore because half the patches in the main are gone and 1 or 2 from the natural pretty soon. So he can get that third situated, but keeping the tank count, right? Everything that he lost versus what was kept is where it starts to get more frustrating, because you mentioned the stim being done for Cure. Obviously, not all the long-term considerations were made in this game by Spirit, because he was open to win with that attack, and he damn well should have. It was a great play by Cure to throw everything at it when he did, but I'm not gonna lie, I definitely felt like Spirit had an opportunity there with maybe being more patient. I think small things like those two tanks both getting hit by the high ground tank right as he went into the natural. He took 2 full shots on all of his tanks before the fight even began. You know, stuff like that. It adds up, and I think maybe just the most tiny overextension as he was climbing in there was just rough. Maybe imagine if he leaves one of those liberators, like blocking the ramp into the natural, right? Covering his rear with that, something like that. But yeah, he's got my brain juices flowing a little bit watching that game, but very, very good play by Cure. And I felt good for him either way, because you mentioned it, but he had all the upgrades. All he had to do was not die, get into some sort of even footing to fight, and then he's got stim, he has +1 attack and all that, and Spirit had, well, nothing.
Yeah, like, you know, armor was canceled at the last second. He actually almost canceled it. He'd been able to, I was gonna say, if he'd been able to cancel the attack upgrade. But even still, the supply was like 40 supply to 10 at the end of it. It just, once that break happens, stimmed bio is so fast. It runs across the map so quickly that it's really hard for Cure to stay, or for Spirit to stabilize once it all goes wrong. And that one certainly did all go wrong. Almost made it happen, but and you talk about, well, maybe you put a liberator on the ramp to make the flank a little bit not as easy. I think Spirit thought that he had totally zoned out anything flying, because he had this Viking lead. He had multiple times trapped Vikings and Ravens as they try to run across the map and make something happen. So you're like, okay, great, I got what I need, we're fine. But Cure was able to sneak it out in time, soaked up just enough damage. That big SCV lead that he had turned into just enough HP buffer, really, to make sure that the important unit survived. And hey, at the end of the day, Cure holds what felt like an impossible game and puts himself up 1 in this series.
And that is exactly what makes him such an absolutely terrifying player in all of these matchups, because he's just, you know, you can try stuff against him, but he's the dude that finds a way, because he plays a crazy amount of games. He plays a lot of those best of 1s and online cups, and that's it's a very different environment. Best of 1 versus best of 3, it's a whole different ball game, man.
That it is. So now he's up 1 game in this series, really making it a possible win. Let's see if he can do it again. It's Cure.
And his opponent, I realized in between those games, I'm seeing on the delay, I didn't have my light on. In the bottom left, the red Terran player, he is Spirit.
It's all right. My lighting setup's also just a little bit wonky. It's fine.
You know, I do like to get a little comfy once we're in the game, and I don't have to think about people looking at me. I'll admit it. I'm human. I turn off the bright lights when we're in the game, and sometimes I forget to press the button to turn them back on. There you go. Throw me in jail and lock away the key, right? Something like that.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you a secret that I have 2 screens up, and I have 1 screen that is just your webcam the entire time.
Oh, okay. You're getting the full range of visual expressions then.
You know, I could be watching.
I gotta sell that as a side one right there. That's gotta be on the stretch goals.
Yeah, you know, I could be watching the game of StarCraft, but I'd rather just stare at your glorious visage. So, pardon me if I missed anything, folks. Nate is just really too distracting.
Although I'll try to turn off any other lights I have in the room for the next game. I got you. Don't worry. Well, Cure expands directly onto the low ground. He's not feeling super concerned. It's a very interesting way, like TVT and Legacy of the Void, ever since the Reaper more or less became like, it was one thing in HOTS when it lost the grenade that it could throw, the original grenade that damaged buildings, and it kind of just became a scout that healed. But in Legacy, and they gave it the little grenade the new grenade that it could throw, and so many builds revolved around that early pressure with the Reaper, and in many ways they still do. But that was like the end of an era. We had so many years of Terrans that would do these either gasless or 1 gas expands, and Sometimes when the right players are playing each other, you'll see people go back to builds like that. But there's a reason that double gas, that fast factory, is so popular, and it's because when you play lots of games against people that you don't necessarily know what they're gonna do, those Reaper builds are just devastating. It's ingrained. It's ingrained from an early level, very early on in your Terran days. If you're not opening with gas and either getting Reapers and Hellions or Reapers and Cyclones in some form of your own, you're asking for it.
You are, and well, for now, this Reaper's going to show up in the main base. Is it going to deny the starport just a little bit? Yeah, there we go. SCV goes down. He's going to get a second. Getting more than one SCV in this setup is, this is a problem. This should not happen. Cure's just not, I guess Spirit's getting damage done on the other side with the Reaper. Actually, you know what? Spirit's getting a lot more damage done. He's got the double Reaper there. He's got the Hellion and the Natural, so you know what? All is forgiven. You shouldn't lose the workers like that, but if you get more on the other side, Nate, I think you're okay.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things about TVT, because again, for me, the focus is always going to be on the power units and what is coming out of the factory, what is coming out of the starport, and are those things being kind of casually thrown away? Are they being repaired? Are you kind of just, you know? But the Marines, the SCVs, like in TVT, these small trades, they don't seem to matter too much until you can really, again, impact whether he's got that Raven, whether the interference matrix comes out on time, if it turns into a supply block as you're trying to get the tank, stuff like that. That's really what makes TVT so tough, because we know if that one tank is in the right spot, the difference of 10 or 12 or 6 Marines is not really what makes or breaks it, because you expect there to be some level of support holding it, right? Maybe a bunker, maybe some SCVs to repair, but you have to be so careful about what you spend your gas on and where you use it, because that's what it's all about for this one. And I think that we're seeing some good patience exercise, a little bit of pokes at the start, but so far nothing too crazy. Bayo, they're both going into Ravens, they're both getting interference matrix and tanks, and we're just gonna wait to see who wants to try and pop that third base first, I suppose, as well, that is Spirit, and it's getting shut down by that drop right as he starts it.
Yeah, it's always interesting, by the way, when you take a look at things. You talk about, okay, well, it's the gas that matters, that's fair, but it's also one of these things where Terran players have the strongest force multiplier in the game, or the most supply efficient unit in the game, maybe, when we talk about the tank, where you can hold off a lot with a little. So it's like, yeah, you know,
the supply can lie. In TVT, I'll say for almost any other matchup, it's not true, but in TVT, the supply lies all the time, and it's exactly stuff like that, because the difference of having, oh, he's got 2 tanks and he's got 3, but if your 2 tanks are in the right spot pre-sieged and the other tanks try to siege in range and they get to scan at the right time, it doesn't matter, you know. So there's just so many different opportunities in this matchup to, well, more or less grief your opponent or punish their mistakes.
Yeah, in part it's why we saw in the Clem series early on, where the game that Clem won against Hero, well, he won multiple games, but a game on the Ghost River game against Hero Marine, where we're like, okay, it's weird that he's not getting his 3-3. He's only on 2-2, but he's committing to tank Raven. And that's because, well, the tanks are gonna sit there defensively. They have their +2. And the Marine count at that point doesn't really matter. Like, it does, it's obviously important, but defensively, it's all about the tanks and the Ravens, right? So as long as you got those, who really cares? And Cure, by the way, is hitting it with an absolute sledgehammer of an attack. This tank gets the unsiege, but it doesn't matter. It's just gonna get shut down. Cure's got 2 tanks here, and Spirit playing a little bit greedier, maybe. Maybe he got 1 extra Raven, I'm not sure, but all of a sudden, I mean, Cure just built this massive supply lead, and this damage that's getting done is not game ending, because we talked about supplies lying and being able to play kind of defensively and maybe shut some things down, but certainly game defining. This is
knocking him off the natural. And you see that the other thing that stands out to me is, yes, the interference matrix cures tanks, but not at a time where he could get in position to do anything about it. So, but as soon as he delivers his first shot from the high ground, boom, Cure can